So we have three people to really give a context to what we're talking about. In the tours, we learned lots of information about salaries and job openings and potential of what's coming in the next few years and what is already a need. But to contextualize that, we have three people to tell stories about their experience of education and work. And because their story is about their education and work, that will allow them to introduce themselves of where they work and what they've done. And we will start with Phyllis, who is at Beacon and Elkhart General Hospital, who also hosted a tour this morning that we had a great turnout this morning at Beacon, and look forward to hearing your story. After Phyllis, then the other two will also share, and then we will have questions from the audience. Is this working now? Check, check. 1, 2. Are we on now? Hello. Here we go.
Good morning. It is still morning, right? I don't see any familiar faces out there, so you'll have to trust me that even though I like to talk, public speaking is not my forte, so if I stutter a little bit, that's why. Those of you that were at the hospital this morning, I forgot a key piece. I want to get a picture of you guys so that we can put it in our newsletter. So after this session, those of you that are willing, if I can meet you in a corner and I'll take a quick shot of you. I think everybody at Elkhart General was excited to see you. I heard some comments even after saying, what a great idea. So anyway, thank you for coming. Like Jason said, I'm Phyllis Miller. I'm a nurse, and I want to start out my story by saying a name, Marvin Nofziger. Mr. Nofziger was my guidance counselor at Northridge High School when I thought I never was going to go to college. That's not for me. I'm going to work in a restaurant. I'll find somebody, I'll get married, have kids. I won't have to work. Life will be good. Well, it didn't roll out that way. And what Mr. Nofziger did for me was he recognized that he was intuitive, he was diligent, and as stubborn and bullheaded as I was in high school, he kept coming back to me saying, you know, Phyllis, you might want to just take chemistry. And I said, no, I want home art, sculpturing, all that hard stuff my senior year. So I graduated with honors, but I never intended to go to school. So I was a cook in some of the great restaurants that we have around here. And by the way, being a cook is probably one of the most underrated jobs in this area. I see some nods, so maybe some people have done that. If you look at a grill cook who has 20 tickets lined up, and you all know what it's like if somebody sitting next to you at another table got their food before you. So there's a major skill set in being able to prioritize that and get hot food out. And anyway, so that's kind of an underrated job. I had about 6 jobs in the first 3 years out of high school. So that tells you how much I was actually looking, tested a lot of different jobs, and I really was working off my income, and it was slowly but surely I realized, you know, I think I could do better. And Mr. Nofziger's face kept coming back to me. So I started with a nursing assistant position in long-term care. At that time, you didn't need to be certified, but that's where I started. And that's where I got the bug, I guess, to take care of patients, to serve the public. So I started doing that, and then I realized, again, it's not well paying. I think I could do better than this. So I had a lot of friends that encouraged me to go into nursing, and I said, you know, I can't do that. It's too expensive. And that was 30 years ago. I just aged myself. 30 years ago, it was expensive then, but I decided I was going to go for my bachelor's right up front. And at the time, I realized, you know, I can pay my debt from a nurse wage much better than I can at a nursing assistant wage. So I plunged in, and because I was going off of my own income, I actually qualified for some grants that I wouldn't have because I was out of high school long enough. Back then, they used to also have a federal nursing student loan program, that if you worked for a not-for-profit, it took some of that debt away. So wish we could get that implemented again. After I graduated, I moved to Seattle, and I had an opportunity to work at an oncology unit there. The nice thing about nursing is anymore, licensures are reciprocal, so you can go to any state. I got a Michigan license without having to go and take a test. So that's one nice thing. After Seattle, I came back, worked in the same long-term care facility, and I moved up into management, and then decided I wanted to do something different. I went to critical care, jumped a big leap, went to critical care at Elkhart General, and I loved it, the challenge. Didn't need additional education, however, they did teach critical care skills internally. I didn't have to go anywhere else. While I was there, I was able to get my certification in critical care, my advanced cardiac life support. I was a teacher, and then in management there. I thought I was going to go to nursing administration because everybody told me how good I would be at it. And when I got there, I thought, it's a little too high up for where my skill set is. So I thought I was going to have to quit. And somebody approached me and said, why don't you go to home care? And I thought, I can do home care for a while. And 8 years later, I realized that I loved that job. I worked in hospice, home care, and I was a quality assurance nurse. And at the time, we implemented soft laptops for the clinicians so they could take care of the patients out in the field without coming in. And I was project manager for that. I migrated then into clinical informatics on the hospital side. So I suddenly was working in information systems. Never had to go to any other training. It was all on site. I was able to get my certification in project management. Did not move, so I could keep doing that there. Let's see. I have 30 years to cover here, so. Yes. Anyway, so where did I leave off? Yes, so I went back. I thought I was going to go somewhere else because informatics, I was there for about 7 years. And then someone approached me about radiation oncology. And I thought, I'm not sure I can do that. But basically, that's where I've been for the last 8 years, working with billing and systems, support the medical record that they use for the radiation treatments. I look at regulations and charge audits, chart review. But I also have my second position is what I love. And those of you that were at Elkhart today probably saw that. I have a second position in performance improvement. I'm the coordinator for the Patient Safety Initiative at Elkhart General, and we look at lean. I have a green belt in lean that I was able to get at Elkhart General. And we're doing some great things with reducing potential harm and reduced cost, and it's my love. So all of this, not only is just a career path, but you can see it's kind of helped to shape things that happen outside of work. I'm now volunteering in several areas and volunteering for this event as well. So that's me. So any questions?
Thank you, Phyllis. So we will save the questions until all three have shared, and then we'll do that. So Jeremy's up.
I like moving around a little bit more to make sure everybody stays awake. First off, I'd like to thank my parents. My parents started Cooper Video. I was actually in Elkhart County on 19. Well, it was a long time ago, so I'm not going to date myself. They taught me customer service. If it wasn't for them, I don't think I would like what I do now, and it's basically customer service. I help people every day. I love it. I love it at the end of the day when I know I've helped somebody. They were great. They started me off when I was 14 years old, working the counter. Most of the time nowadays we can't do that with legality of it. But they were great. They taught me how to talk to people. I think many of you know we don't do that anymore. We sit on our iPads, we sit on our phones, and we don't look at people anymore. We need to do that. I got to do that for quite a few years. I did that for 6 years. I went to Ivy Tech. I went a little bit to IUSB, went to Purdue. I went to the Elkhart Career Academy. There I was taking computer integrated manufacturing technology, where you sit on a CNC machine. I found out I didn't like doing that. CNC machine didn't talk back to me. I like talking to people. I have a good time doing that. Basically, I've worked for 3 families. I worked for my parents. I worked for the Koffels. They own a vending company. I worked for them for 17 years. And now I've worked for Red Hen Turf Farm for 6. I'm not a job hopper. I will probably retire from Red Hen Turf Farm. Families are great. They're great to work for when you find that right family. I would have stayed at Koffel Vending. I just couldn't marry into the family and get any higher at that company. That was it. I was done. I was topped out, and after a few years, I wasn't going anywhere else, so I had to move. I knew at a point in my life that I had to learn more and I had to do more. I had met the Millars, the company, or the people I currently work for, and they were always hitting me up like, "What are you doing? What do you like? What do you know? What do you read?" What do you mean, what do I read? You should be reading a book, fiction, nonfiction, business. You should be reading a book once a month. If you're not doing that, you're not learning. If you're not in school, you're not learning. And from then on, I was reading. And then the job came up. He was retiring because I want you to meet my son. He's going to be running the company. And I want you running my job. You're not going to be farming. You're going to be the face of Red Hen Turf Farm. You're the perfect guy to do that, as long as you keep reading. So now what we're instilling is, reading in-house. We're reading my customers. I have a library in my office. Customer comes in and I'm there, asking me questions. I'm like, "What's the last book you read?" "What do you mean?" "Here's E-Myth. Read it. You're in construction. You need to understand what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. There's plenty of smart people out there. They've wrote books. Read about it." What I do is I control flow. I manage employees, manage quality. I wear a lot of hats during the day. I left my phone over there because it's probably a few more texts on it of what's going on today. What we did this year with marketing, having a marketing internship, with having a tomato production internship, we see value in things like this where we learn about other programs out there. And this is why we come to these things, because we want to learn more. And today at DJ Construction, I learned a lot. I learned that other people are having the same problems. And I love sitting around a bunch of teachers going, "I didn't know they were having these problems with these kids. I didn't know that these things were going on." And I really appreciate, things like this where we can learn more. I take my continuing education courses at Purdue and at Michigan State. I love learning more, and I love being able to pass that information on to our customers. I have a really good time doing that. If there's anything I can say, it's just you got to read. You always can learn more. And I really appreciate all you teachers in here. My parents got me to where I am today. And like we said earlier, you guys are the teachers. You guys are helping. You guys are making sure people show up on time, making sure they're fed, making sure they're learning. If you guys can't produce good quality students, I can't get a good quality employee that's going to help my customer. And I really want to thank all those teachers out there that are producing those great kids. My grandmother was my 7th grade teacher. I didn't get away with a single thing in school. So I really appreciate each and every one of you.
It's still morning. Good morning. My name's Tom Till. I am currently with Ivy Tech Community College in Warsaw, Indiana. My story is one where I had some wonderful parents that told me from the time I was a little kid that you're going to go to a 4-year college. So I did. I graduated from high school. I was running my mom on a kidney dialysis machine at home, and I started going to school at IPFW in Fort Wayne to be an accountant. And it's like after 6 whole weeks in the program, and I paid for college out of my paper route money, my pizza place money, and it was out of my pocket. I discovered I hate this. I hate the curriculum. I hate the atmosphere. As you well know, college is thrown at you 100 times faster than anything you do in high school, right? So it was a real shock. And also having to manage my mom's situation with the dialysis machine was tough. So I quit, and I was at and you also learn when you quit, you get nothing back after 6 weeks. So not only was I dumb, but I was dumb, right? I thought so then. So I got a job in a local factory, and the factory saw me, and they said, wow, we got a college boy here. 6 weeks of college, and I was a college person. But a lot of times back in the 70s, people went to work in a factory with no education. They came right out of high school, and many times they went to a factory because they couldn't get a job anywhere else. So I got put into the tool room, and that was really a cool thing. It was lathes and mills and grinders and all kinds of mechanical equipment to help you make something out of a piece of material. I did that job, and there were lots of people that worked in that tool room that had done that job for 30 years. So I'd ask them questions. Okay, I want to drill this hole through this piece of material. How fast do I turn the machine on? And depending on who you talk to, you got a different answer from everybody in the place. Nobody could really explain a logical way to look at things. Because the one thing I believe is the whole world, except for the guy upstairs, is based on things like physics and science and math. All that comes together, and that is how our world works. So when I couldn't get the answers to my questions, I found Ivy Tech Community College. It was Indiana Vocational Technical College back then. And the cool thing was, I thought, man, I want to go learn about this. There was a thing that I was talking about earlier, speeds and feeds. How fast do you turn a machine on? And I think one of the very first classes I took there talked about that subject. And it taught me how to figure that Monday through Friday, different materials. I could come up with a good starting point for any of that, and it was all based on physics, science, and mathematics. It was wonderful. The next cool thing about that is my employer told me, if you're willing to go to school on your own time, we'll pay for it. Now that was pretty cool because I had lost my grand savings from when I was a kid, and my company was willing to pay for my books, my tuition. They didn't pay for me to sit in class. They didn't pay for my gasoline, and that was expensive going back and forth to Fort Wayne. But I started going to school, and I loved it. And I continued more classes, and I said, I'm going to get this 2-year degree. I was about halfway done with the 2-year degree, and my company bought this brand new machine called a CNC machine. There weren't very many out there in small companies. Computer numerical control. It was taking that old lathe, grinder, and mill, putting a computer on it, and now that had to be programmed. And they said, who are we going to have program this machine? I said, well, Tom's going to Ivy Tech, and he's taking algebra, he's taking trigonometry. Let's put him in the position. Now, I didn't know if I wanted to move to an office position. I enjoyed working in a factory, and I said, you know what? What's this all about? And they said, well, a couple things. Number one, you get to move into an office, so instead of working in a factory, you're moving into an office. You get to wear nicer clothes to work, and then they also said, we're going to give you a raise. Because see, at 23 years old, I was making the most money I could make in a factory. I was at the top of my class. 23 years old, I was making the same amount of money as that 65-year-old guy next to me. And he didn't much like me for that, and I really didn't want to be where I was. So it gave me the opportunity to move up in the company. I finished Ivy Tech. I loved my job, was doing well, and I said, you know what? I got the confidence now. I'm going to go back to that big old IPFW scary place, and I'm going to go for a degree in engineering. So, started taking classes in engineering. About halfway through that program, my lab partner in physics was a guy that now works at Biomet. And he said, we're looking for a couple of manufacturing engineers at DePuy Orthopedics. He said, you ought to come apply. I said, what does a manufacturing engineer do at DePuy Orthopedics? He told me, and it was darn near the same type of job description that I had working in the automotive company. So I said, I love my company, but I'm going to go over and apply. Went over, applied, took one walk through the place and said, I want to be here. New equipment. It was 70 degrees in the summer and winter, climate controlled. Hell, the place I worked, it was 115 degrees in the summer. You were dying. Okay, so I went to DePuy. I got my job as a manufacturing engineer, finished my degree in engineering. I'd been there about 10 years, and one day they came up and said, how would you like to be the engineering manager for manufacturing? And it's like, wow, this is really something, because I didn't plan any of this, remember? I saw myself as a factory worker, a machinist, and here all I'm doing is going to school that they're paying for, and I'm getting all these great opportunities. just working hard every day, every day, every day. And I think that's something we have to tell our young people is it doesn't get easy. Every day I went to work, I struggled. Every day I went to work, I worked like I was going to get fired if I didn't do better because I was worried about not doing enough, okay? So when I turned 55, and I'll tell you my age, I'm 57 now, in 2013, I said, you know, I really want to change my direction of my life. I've gotten to travel all over the world. I've got to do some really wonderful things at different Depew companies. I had a dream job, but I didn't really get much satisfaction out of it. So I had been spending the last year of my career, my boss was in Ireland. I spent time looking at plants in China and Ireland and England and Switzerland. And I saw over there many of the young people in those countries get out of high school when they're 16. And they either go down a professional path or they go down a technical path. So most of the people that I would talk to at the plants overseas that worked in the factory had some kind of a technical degree, some kind of a certificate, some kind of education. And the thing that scared me is the people in those countries want our jobs. I don't know how to say it any nicer than that, but we're making hips all over the place in Warsaw, Indiana. If we can't get people to fill these jobs, there's companies that each one of those companies own overseas. We have to fill those jobs with qualified, skilled employees. We've got to get people fired up about the opportunities that we have. I was over at Conn-Selmer this morning watching them make instruments, and I'm telling you what, there's a lot of similarities with making a hip, knee, and a shoulder to making a horn. A lot of similarities. So these jobs cross-trade in many different fields. We've got opportunities today that I've never seen in my life. It used to be everybody is wanting people with 5, 6, 10 years experience. They're hiring people out of high school and saying, we'll train them ourselves. We're just dying to have people come in that will come to work every day with a smile on their face, eager to learn. And you know what? We've got to deliver more than that, though, because if all we're doing is delivering a class of people that are smiling and come to work every day, it's not good enough. We've got to get people that are willing to work hard, go to school, get educated, move into a position, and continue to work their way up and grow it, because they have a foundation for what happens in that company. Okay? Thank you.
So Brian has a microphone. If you have a question for any of these fine guests, please let us know.
Andrew from an In-Focus Group. We're a talent retention firm out of St. Joseph County. This question is for Phyllis in terms of the informatics background in healthcare. Has that been growing, and how has those jobs changed, especially with the new legislative requirements, meaningful use, in terms of emerging workforce and one of our largest employers? Is that a growing field?
I like somebody that knows the word meaningful use. That is a tough, it's hard to explain. We could do a whole seminar on that. But yes, there really are two areas in clinical in informatics in the healthcare environment. One is technical and one's clinical. And I think a lot of people don't know that there really is a difference. I couldn't do anything with a computer if my life depended on it. But I do manage the software that we have so that it's set up best for the clinicians to be able to use it and give optimal care. So they don't have to focus so much on the software as they focus on the patient. We have moved to, as you probably know, we've moved to electronic medical record. We had to do that. So clinical informatics had a big opportunity with that as nurses. I don't know if that's relative to anything anybody else does, but you know, it's better if the people that use a product have the ability to build it rather than someone telling us how to do it. So as a nurse, that was key to be able to be a part of that. I did not have to have additional training. The vendor of the software that we purchased, McKesson and now Cerner, they teach you, and so it's all on the job. One additional thing I forgot to mention, it's huge, but I was able to get my master's in public administration through Elkhart General. It really wasn't based toward a job, and they didn't feel threatened by it, like I'm going to get my master's and leave. So it really didn't pertain to my job, but after about 3 years of evening classes, I was able to get my master's in public administration as well. But that's a good question, Andrew.
Okay, and Focus is dominating the questions, so others have to catch up. Lex is from there too. Go ahead, Lex. Tell us your name.
Hi, yeah, Lex Dennis from Focus. Jeremy, I noticed you mentioned internships. Can you share maybe a little bit about your experience with the interns and talk about the benefits to your company?
Basically, we found out it elevated everybody else. You have to have buy-in with farmers. Farmers been doing stuff the same way for a very long time, and you have to teach them to think differently a lot of times. That's kind of why I was hired. The interns we used this year, we had one for marketing, worked out great. She was able to get a lot of programs that I wanted started out there, because we just didn't have time when we're busy. We actually have a term for it. It's called EBB, early before busy. We try and get everything done during the winter, because we don't do anything during the winter. The other interns we had one for tomatoes. He was great. Just coming out of college, he had buy-in. He'd been working in Illinois at their ag department, and he understood tomatoes. So he had that quick buy-in, and they realized, we got to listen to this guy. He's coming out with a lot of great information. The other one we had did great. He worked in our field. He was wanting to learn more about cover crops. I'm also the chairman, vice chair of St. Joe County Soil and Water District, and we help farmers learn about filter strips, cover crops. It's all those great things, so then your water quality is good. And he learned about us, and he's like, hey, can I get a job out with you? And also, I'd like to learn more about this, so I can take this back to college with me. So he was able to learn a lot on that end of it, too. And it elevated the people we have in the fields, because a lot of our entry-level jobs, you have a high school education, you have a driver's license, you can work, we'll bring you into it. And it elevated all those positions, and we're going to continue to do that, and we're looking for more and more for next year.
Hi, I'm John Kurtelek from Trinity School at Greenlawn in South Bend. And let's see, so I've heard this both on this panel and in the discussion and, throughout the day. People are talking about how, it seems like everyone really wants to hire the people who, have good life skills, show up to work on time, they're smiling, they're ready to learn. And, you guys have all said pretty much the same thing. Jeremy, you said on your tour this morning that the place you went was experiencing the same problems that you were seeing, though. So I was just wondering, both for you, but for anyone on the panel, if you could kind of talk about the flip side of that a little bit. What kind of problems do you have with workforce? What kind of problems do you have with, people coming in? Are you saying? It's just kind of the flip side. We know, we've heard what you're looking for, but could you talk about the flip side a little bit?
Show up on time. It's the biggest thing. I brought this up at the meeting this morning, and the way I put it was, this isn't about you at this point. It's about the 8 other supervisors you're going to have in your entire life. And I want to help you help them. Your job will be easier if you show up on time. Your next 8 jobs will be easier. What's the millennium's going to have? 30 jobs by the time they're 60 at this point? They're going to have 30 different bosses. If you can just show up on time for that boss, they're going to be appreciative, and they're going to see something in you. One of the things I didn't mention, I had a great mentor at Coffle Vending. He saw something in me right away, and he taught me every little bit that they do in the management side of it. So as soon as he retired, I had his job. And when I went to the ag business, I called him up and I go, hey, what do you think about the ag business? He goes, welcome to the ag business, because he had moved to the ag business too. That's what we're looking for.
Sure. The fun thing about retiring from Depew is now I get invited into the other orthopedic companies, so I get to crawl through the factories that they used to be my competitors. And interestingly, I'll talk to managers that tell me that they hire 20 people, and 2 weeks later there are 2 people left. So what happens? They don't come to work. They a lot of horseplay. The one employee got fired for stealing another employee's cell phone, and it was horseplay, kidding around. He was no intention of doing any damage. But people have to understand, when you go to work for an employer, that employer hires you for one reason, and that's to make the employer money. And if you make that employer money, they'll really be nice and share some of that with you. And talking about people and job retention, again, people aren't going to stick around long enough where it seems like it matters anymore. It used to be people worked at places 25, 30 years, and you just don't see that. You see people switching jobs every couple of years now. So I think that's a problem too.
I think one advantage we have is we're one of the largest employers in the area. So just as when I went to nursing administration and realized that I had left critical care and I moved into a job that I probably shouldn't have, they easily could have said bye. But they saw something in me and asked me, why don't you do home care for a little while? So we have that ability to look at what someone's skill set is, and what's difficult is, especially when someone needs a certain wage, often that's what drives someone. So they end up in a position that makes more money than what their skill or their desire to work that job is. So it's like working yourself up. We talked about it this morning. If you're not sure you want to be a nurse, you can get some training at Career Center and be a CNA. And that's what I did. I started as a CNA and then realized I was moving up. So a lot of it is relationships. I didn't mention that earlier, but I think if I look back over my career, it's the relationships that you build, just as you guys are saying, that's how you advance and find your way from those relationships within your job and other places too.
Go ahead, and then we'll do this.
Hi, I'm Robert Allball with Lakeland High School. I'm interested, Tom, in the synergy you guys have created in Warsaw between the high school, the orthopedic manufacturers, and Ivy Tech.
Yes, I tell you what, we're really fortunate. OrthoWorks is kind of a center. Is everybody familiar with OrthoWorks in Warsaw? It was started by a grant from Lilly. And so what they did about 5, 6, 7 years ago, they kind of pulled the different orthopedic companies together, and they formed an advanced manufacturing committee. And when I worked at DePuy, I was the DePuy representative on that committee. And what they did is they looked at our curriculum, and they worked with these employers, Ivy Tech, and what we did is we developed a 22-week quick program to get somebody with absolutely no exposure to CNC machining into the industry as a CNC machinist. And then our wonderful partners at Work One, I've got nothing but kudos to say for them. They've done a lot of funding of these people to come over to Ivy Tech. And then the best part of it is when they're done with the 22-week program, everybody that's gone through this program that I know of has gotten a job starting out at $12 to $16 an hour. That's huge because, again, that's not a lot of money, but it's a great starting wage. And where you go is what are you willing to do? Where are you willing to go? I've known people that have come in there. A CNA couldn't work anymore because she hurt her back. She took this program. She's been working for one of the smaller local manufacturers for about a year now, and now she's back at Ivy Tech saying, I'm going to get bored at this job, I'm telling you. What I want to do is I want to be a supervisor. I want to be an engineer. I want to. So now she's taking classes, and she's also getting more financial assistance to go to school to do something different. And she said, you know what, you never would have thought a back injury would have been a blessing, but this has been a blessing because it's opened my eyes to all the possibilities out there. Now, the other thing that we've done is Work One's been instrumental in developing these bus tours. So about every 6 months, they take a tour of people, and it started out with superintendents, principals, counselors, and people in the school system. And we visit a large orthopedic company, a small orthopedic company, the Warsaw Area Career Center at the high school, and then Ivy Tech, the OAMTC where I work, the Orthopedic and Advanced Manufacturing Training Center, where we've got like $4 million worth of orthopedic, automotive, agriculture type equipment, lathes, mills, grinders, maintenance program. So it's really kind of fired us up. We now have a joint machine tool advisory board where it's got high school folks on that from the Career Center, it's got Ivy Tech folks on it, and then a bunch of local employers sit on that board too, because we're trying to train the next generation of machinists, of maintenance folks, of engineers that are going to work in our community. Does that answer your question? Yes. Thank you.
Here's a question over here.
Yeah, Matt Jerlucky from Concord Community Schools. To kind of piggyback off of that and what you had referenced with the foreign workforce, at 16 they're graduating, speak to, I guess we'll call it the hard skills instead of the soft skills. So what, Tom, what skills are we missing that now, especially with your partnership with Warsaw High School, that we're missing, that we should, when a kid graduates from high school now in 2015, 18, 20, that they should have that we're not training them to have?
Truly, I think it's, somebody said earlier, Amish said, it's how to solve problems, okay? It's really how to think. I think that if somebody has the good attitude, right attitude, and also has some basic understanding of how to think, how to learn. I talk to every month. I go see the high school equivalency students in the daytime, in the evening, and they're anybody from 17, 16 years old up to 60 years old. We've had folks, because those people haven't earned a high school equivalency, and you talk about being at a place in their life where they're not going anywhere. I heard a recent figure that says 45% of everybody that's completed a bachelor's degree in the last 5 years are working in jobs that require a high school diploma. So what's happened is all these people that have gotten a 4-year degree can't find a job in what they got a degree in, so they're taking jobs in retail, they're taking jobs in fast food, in restaurants, and what it's done, it's pushed all these other folks out of contention, because if you can hire a high school graduate, or excuse me, a person that doesn't have a high school diploma, and you can hire somebody that's got a 4-year degree to work in your restaurant, who are you going to pick, right? Because neither are probably going to stay there too long. So I think that you teach people how to show up, because that's a must. There's not much leeway on that one. You teach them how to smile. I have employers tell me that people come to their interview in their pajamas. I have employers tell me they ask people, they ask them a question and people won't even look at them in the eye when they're talking to them. They look down, or do you have any questions? I teach those high school equivalency kids, you want to say something impressive to an employer when they say, do you have any questions? Don't ask them how much money you're going to make. Ask them, do you have a tuition reimbursement program? Because I might want to go back to college someday, or I am going to go back to college someday. And again, I tell lots of folks, don't think about going to college for a degree. Think about taking a class that you're kind of interested in. Take one class. Do it part-time while you're working. Learn something. And figure out that when you're going to school for something that you're interested in, it's fun. And when it's fun, you typically do well. And just like for my personal situation, I got the degree at Ivy Tech, and I did it really well there. But I was really interested in it. It was fun, and it gave me the courage to go back and look at something more difficult like engineering. So, that answer? I wish it was an easy one. It's not. It's a lot of things. But go to work every day, work your tail off, do the best you can do, always be there to help other people, work as a team member, because again, people need people to work on multidisciplined problem-solving teams.
We have time for one more question. Over here.
Hi, my name is Anthony Holliday. I'm the Work-Based Learning Coordinator for Region 2. And my question goes to the entire panel. I want to know, what are the fastest growing segments at each one of your companies?
What did he say? Fastest growing segments. In healthcare? Pretty much everything. As I shared this morning, we may not be aware, but at some point, a third of all Americans are going to be baby boomers that are in retirement. So if you look at what that's going to do to healthcare, many of us are baby boomers, so we might be the patients or the recipients of. So nursing, there are some specialty areas that are in demand. I don't even remember, maybe you guys remember what Laura said this morning, if there are some that, some of the therapies, physical therapy, I see somebody looking at their notes. Yeah, surgical techs is probably the one job role, but I mean, we went over like 40 roles this morning, and that's just skimming the top. So healthcare in general is going to need some help in the future because of just the increased population and retirement. One of the things to comment on your question was that I think, again, we're a larger employer, so we have the liberty to do that, but it's getting the right fit for that person. Again, dollars or wage drives so much of what somebody may tell you they want to do, but we're setting them up to fail if we don't. You all are great at seeing what the potential is of each of your students and not guiding them into being a physician if that's not something they're going to be skilled at, especially if they're saying, I want to be a doctor and I can make a lot of money and have a big house. So it's helping them at that time to just start with baby steps, and that's okay.
I'd have to say operators, anybody that can drive equipment. Our biggest problem right now is most farmers that own their own property are 55 years old and older. It's getting very, very tough to wrench on these bigger and bigger pieces of equipment. This week we have a piece of equipment that's showing up that's about $400,000. I have a 52-year-old driving it, and I'm training a 20-year-old on it. It scares me that there's a 20-year-old in that piece of equipment. It is an awesome piece of equipment, but you have to be able to learn how to use it and how dangerous it is when other people are out there. We have a lot of kids that show up that want to look at the farm equipment. You got to keep them away from the big equipment. Everything has become so precision in farming. We use satellites every single day to drive our equipment. There's only so much land in America. We have to be able to use equipment all the time, and the older population is having a harder and harder time getting into that. So we're trying to find the younger generation to come in here, the millennials, and teach them, hey, this is ag, this is great, this is a job of the future. John Deere has been having their own steering tractors for 20 years. These cars that drive around, we're like, we've been doing this for 20 years. The only time we have to move the equipment is when we get to the end of the field. You got to be able to turn it back around. So we need those people, those operators that are willing to think on their own. Something's not working, you have to get out of the piece of equipment. You have to figure out what is going on. Why is this not working right? So the teaching thinking, it's a tough one.
Well, right now CNC machining is really big around our area. I think there's a lot of operators that are going to retire in the next 5-10 years. For people that are more mechanically inclined, maintenance is a really great field. I noticed the people at the plant we were at today, there's two maintenance guys setting up this new robot, and they both had really gray hair, and they looked like they were going to retire in the next few years. So if students are good at taking things apart, putting it back together, and not having any extra pieces, maybe they'd like to look at maintenance. I had a young man come to me and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be a CEO. And I thought, that really sounded dumb. But you know what? He was really there. He wanted to be a CEO. I think looking at the Hoosier Hot 50 is a great place to start with your students because it tells what jobs are really hot right now, and it looks forward. And there's, I talk to young people all the time about when I went to the library to figure out something, I had to pull out an encyclopedia, and I hoped it was like new enough that the pages didn't fall out. With YouTube videos, I bet you if you put a Google search in for tractors that drive themselves, you get education. In 5 minutes, you can get more of an education than I could have ever gotten if I wanted to know about a hospital administrator, I could learn about that in Google. So start out with a Hoosier Hot 50. Look at those jobs. You want to see what it's like to be a machinist? Go to Google and you can watch somebody run a CNC machine and probably talk to you about, well, this is what I do as a CNC machinist. So there you go.
Thank you, Tom, Phyllis, and Jeremy. Let's give them another hand.